You're listening to Conversations with Chanda, a Minneapolis Foundation podcast that unpacks the community's grittiest, most vexing problems, hosted by Chanda Smith-Baker.
All right. Welcome to Conversations with Chanda. I'm super thrilled to have you in this conversation with me for a couple of reasons, and one of which is that you were with me with the very first podcast that I ever did in that first season. So it feels like a bit of a full circle moment. But before we jump into that conversation, would you mind providing just an introduction? How do you introduce yourself? How do you want the listeners to know you? And just say a little bit about you.
Sounds good. Yes. My name is Uzoma Obasi. Some people call me Uzi. You might hear people call me that every now and then. I am a creative entrepreneur. I have some different creative businesses. One's an event photography business where we document meetings and all sorts of fun, boring corporate things. And then I have a video production company where we help small businesses and nonprofits tell their story in a way that actually helps them reach their goals. Because sometimes when it comes to smaller businesses or nonprofits, what's missing is making sure that the goal is met. So we help more on the pre-production end to make sure that that gets all the way through. I also have a clothing line called Creative House, which is also my production company with my business partner, Amir Abdullah. And I am now actually getting more into the art space and creating prints from the photography that I do. So that's a little bit about me. I do a lot of different things, but it's all in the creative realm.
Were you always creative?
I think a little bit. I was always creative and entrepreneurial. When I was in first or second grade, I started a business called Gloopy Glue, which I would
Gloopy glue?
Gloopy Glue, yep.
Okay.
I would take people's glue and dye it whatever color they wanted using markers. And then Elmer's put me out of business because they started releasing colored glue. So that was the first lesson there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should have got that patent.
Should have got that patent. Brand deal with them or something.
Man, they should be teaching that in kindergarten. You would have been ready.
Right.
What I mentioned in my introduction is that you were with me in the beginning when we launched the podcast. And it was quite comforting, actually, to have you there. And as you know, it was a bit of a push to get me to do this. I don't know if you have anything about your observation of that period of my career here, I guess.
No, I thought it was good for you in that time period, and seeing how comfortable you are now with the interviews you've done, since then. I think it was good because it helps you kind of, I don't know, I think when people are so, into doing the work, they don't necessarily want to be the face of the work all the time. And you felt like you were being thrown to be in the face of it. But I think that's needed because we don't see enough people doing that in the Twin Cities because it's just culturally frowned upon, kind of. And then the people who do put themselves out there are doing it for the wrong reasons. So it's always good to see someone do it for the right reasons and then use their voice that they have and making sure more people can hear what they have to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if people could have only been sort of the fly on the wall and you're like, do more, do this, like just the coaching from behind the scenes. So I appreciate that. And then, in parallel to that, because you were so sort of instrumental in that time, right? And it wasn't just the podcast, but the live conversations too, which were, not easy topics. And when even now when I look back, right, my first podcast was with Van Jones. I didn't even go with someone I knew, right? I'm with the professional commentator, right? And then my first two live conversations were with Robin DiAngelo on white fragility. And then the second one was with Edgar on decolonizing wealth, right? So they're big topics I just jumped right in on, right? And I thought they were weighty and, thinking about how to manage both my personal experiences, the experience of people that I hold, and an audience sometimes that are not always clear on those experiences or clear that sometimes they are perpetrating these experiences on folks of color. And so it was really quite complicated. And I remember then thinking about some of the things that I've watched you cover and the even more complexity of it, particularly following George Floyd's murder. And so I would love to just talk to you about the evolution of your storytelling let's start with George. How did you end up covering, like, what did you do? How did you end up with Ben Crump?
Everything goes back to Alex Tittle. Most times when I link back any bigger event or major event in history that I've done, it always goes back to him. So I had gotten a text from a guy who Alex had recommended to me to do photography for him. I get a text from him in the middle of the night, the day before Ben got to town, saying, Ben Crump needs you tomorrow. I'm like, okay. That was literally the conversation. Then I got connected with Ben's people, and from there started shooting with him. It was only supposed to be to cover a press conference, and Ben really liked the way I worked and how quickly I worked, how efficiently it was. And he's like, "Can you stay the rest of the day?" And I was, "Can you come back tomorrow? Can you come back the next day? Hey, we have 3 more funerals for George. Can you go to North Carolina and then Houston with us?" And then from Houston, we left the burial right after the last prayer before putting George into the tomb. And we had to go straight from there to get on a plane to go to DC for Philonis, George's brother, and Ben to testify in front of Congress. So I went for that, and then back to Houston, and then home. So it's kind of like a whirlwind 10 days that started with a, hey, can you be available tomorrow? I think with some of the past, work I've done where it has to be quick and it has to be accurate, it has to be more, documentative versus, trying to force a moment. That helped me be able to take something like this on and not have to worry about, am I getting this? Am I getting that? Like, what about this? What about that? But, I'm able to be more efficient with it. So it fit just with the style I've been running my business as, to be able to hop into something like this in Ben Crump's world.
The emotions in the city were so high, and the emotions of many of us were high, right? Like, we were completely disrupted. Like, I don't know where you personally were. I can only anticipate where I think you were. So how were you able to sort of balance? Was it helpful to be there? Was it like, what was happening with you over this course of the 10 days? Like, bring us into the story. Bring us into the story of these 10 days.
Yeah. So, let's go before the 10 days. So after, George's murder happened, and police, I remember seeing just the police report that had been put out there, and went, okay, moved on with my day. And then more stuff started coming out. I actually never saw the video until the first day of court, because I didn't want to see the video. But it was hard to avoid that first day. It's been described to me, been told to me, and same thing happened to me when Philando Castile was murdered. I, kind of just needed to just not do anything. So for those next couple of days, I just wasn't really doing anything. So getting that text was helpful for me because, I just had a son. So going out to protests where people are getting tear gas and arrested and shot by pawn shop owners and all sorts of things, I was not looking to get into that mix, just because it wasn't where I could help the best and where me as a photographer could be. There were a lot of photographers out there documenting what was happening out there, which is good. And then now for me to be able to document with Ben and the family was where I felt like I needed to be, because being able to take those pictures for us to be able to share, whether it's on social media or wherever it is, but being able to help control the narrative from our end and be on offense is something that doesn't necessarily happen too often, where we're able to say, like, this is who this person was, this is who loved him, these are the people who cared about him, this is a real person, this was not just some random person that no one cared about. So being able to show those pieces is really what came through with my work, is showing that, this was a human being versus a hashtag, a case, whatever, an event, because people like to refer to George as just those things, but he was a human. So being able to show that human side and that family side was really what was important for my work, I think.
Mm-hmm. Did you have an opinion about Ben Crump before you met him?
I did not, actually. I had an opinion about Al before I met him.
Let's talk about that. Al Sharpton. Let's talk about Al.
It's funny too, because like you always like think, like you sometimes wonder like where these opinions come from. So like as I saw him walk in the room first, I'm like, okay, whatever. And I started thinking about, okay, I'm basing this off of no actual personal experience. So I'm like, let me start from just zero and not let my mind be, it's like poison, but poison from outside sources that are not, checked by me at all. So,
right. So opinions like what he always shows up, like, right, the ambulance chasing sort of thing, like here comes the circus, like all this stuff that we hear about him.
Yeah,
right?
And that's the thing. Okay. That's all the stuff we hear. And what we don't see is the fact that he is actually there for the families. He is the one that they're going to call. Like, he doesn't do it for the general public. He does it for those families. So seeing that in person and then hearing other people tell stories about how there was a key witness in their case that needed to actually show up to court, but the guy kept getting arrested for selling drugs. And Al flew into town and was like, how much are you getting paid? How much are you making selling drugs? And the guy's like, told him this is how much he's making because this is how much he needs. And then to, be able to pay the bills and stay, alive. And I was like, I'm going to pay you that. Just stop selling drugs. And so stories like that, where he's taking money out of his own pocket to then make sure this person can be out of jail and be a credible witness for this case that's happening here. And then for, him going in and paying funerals because he knows that he can help in those ways. And people are saying he does it for attention, but that's kind of the point. Because when there is no attention, then no one cares. Like, even now, people don't want to talk about George anymore. They want to move on. They don't care anymore.
What would have you believe that people don't care anymore?
People want to move on. From the experiences I've had and when the looks I've seen when the topic is brought up, and with some of the conversations I've had about different projects that people first approached me about, then now they just like, no, we're not really thinking about this anymore. We're thinking about it this way. Mm-hmm. Speaking pretty vague, but because I don't want to be too specific with the same scenario I'm speaking of, but like it's just
So if I were to help put what I think you're saying into words, because I may be witnessing some of this as well, where in the moment people want to understand both what happened on that day to being really moved in the movement of what was happening in the city, scared for the city, wanting to understand what is happening around policing and race and systemic racism, and really going all in during that year following his murder. To now people sort of but not being as intentional about the work that still needs to be done around racial justice, understanding how it was the little racist acts of Derek Chauvin and people that lead to the big thing, right? You have to pay attention to the small thing. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm saying. Like, I mean, to sum it up, they didn't keep the same energy. The energy's gone. They didn't keep it.
Al's interesting too, because I've ran into him a couple of times, and I actually saw him not that long ago. It's an interesting thing where you hear people a lot of times in the community do describe him as he just shows up for attention. And yet in the same breath, people are grateful may not be the right word, but that's the word I guess I just used, but for, cell phone cameras and an ability to document the injustices that are going on so that we can elevate an issue. So they're actually, in fact, doing both things. He's been elevating issues before we had camera phones, but he's sort of had some reputational damage, and maybe he's not always had the best approaches, or maybe we haven't agreed with them, but they've been effective for the families for the most part that he's helped. And so Ben Crump is sort of in that same frame where people are like, I don't like, he hasn't won any cases anyway, or he just shows up, he just pops up where there's issue. And that's not necessarily been my point of view. It feels like to me, there's a network of unfortunate families that have had to suffer publicly through these police involved homicides. And they have a network, and they sort of share the resources that they have found the most helpful. And he is one of them. And so as you got to know Ben Crump, what did you learn?
I learned that he's real. Like that's exactly, like he is doing what he's supposed to be doing. And he really doesn't, it sounds terrible, he doesn't have to be. Like he has, it's a very small amount of his cases are these police brutality cases or when someone's murdered by the police. That's a very small amount, but they're the loudest ones. They're the ones that people are going to be, the media is going to be covering. They're not covering when he's suing XYZ company for XYZ reason, and these huge companies for these other reasons, where that's what's really even funding these cases, because they'll go and go and go, and if there's no settlement, then Ben doesn't get paid.
Mm-hmm. He's done a lot around predatory banking.
He's done some. I haven't been with him too many on those, but I know he's had some cases around predatory banking, and they've probably sued every major bank in this country because they're all doing it. Mm-hmm. And they'll keep doing it until they figure out how to make sure from the bottom to the top all those policies that they put in place are taken out.
Mm-hmm. The documentary, what is it called? Is it called Ben? It's called Crump on Netflix that just came out?
It's called Civil.
Oh, it's called Civil. So I watched it. I think it did sort of expand my perspective of him and sort of, I guess, my appreciation of the network of folks around him that have worked very hard to elevate the issue, not just get the family resources following the death of their loved one, because nobody wants that, right? But to elevate the issue. So just to go back sort of where I started with is that you spent these 10 days with Ben and that team and George Floyd's family. How has that impacted you?
Just helped me, expand just my thinking as far as what needs to be done to get some change. And before, I think a lot of people think whatever they're doing is a thing that needs to be done. So whether it's someone that's an activist that's protesting, organizing, and disrupting, they think that's what needs to be done. That's it. And then there's people who are, organizing corporations to, bring funding back in the communities. There's people who are leading nonprofits that are helping in their way. And I think it's so easy for everyone to think that that's all they should be doing, is all we should be doing is just that their way, but it really is a whole collective. We need everything. So it kind of helped me see that more clearly, that we need everyone doing their part. We don't just have an army, we don't just have a Marines, we don't just have an Air Force, we have everything that needs to work together to then win.
Were you in the courtroom? I know for sure you were in a room, maybe a hotel room or something, when the guilty verdict came down for Derek Chauvin.
I was with the rest of the family. We had an overflow room in a hotel down the street. I was not in the courtroom.
What was that moment like?
It was a sense of relief. After the first one came in, everyone, got excited, but then we're like, wait, there's still 2 more counts. There's always a sense of hopeless optimism the whole time, from, when we knew the verdict call came in to when the actual verdict was read. So we, felt that release. We felt that happiness then once all 3 counts came in. But shortly after, I was like, well, we got to do this all over again, because the next day we buried Dante Wright. So
in the middle of all of this, then Dante is killed, and now you're with his family. Were the families also together?
There were some times when we were together, and we did a joint press conference, I believe, 2 days after he was murdered. The night he was murdered, I was picking Ben up from the airport at midnight, and just telling him what was happening. And then by the next day, he was brought onto the case. And then the morning after that, I was doing Good Morning America and making sure that the families had a chance to speak, because that's the thing, people, I think, don't understand necessarily how important it is to get in front of the press, using the press to be able to make sure that we can have a narrative out there that speaks to who this human really was, versus letting it just run wild, and what's just tends to happen. It's just this person was this person was that, this person, whatever it was. But like, it doesn't necessarily matter all those things, because none of the things that people are talking about that will, demean the character of that person is supposed to be a death sentence.
Yeah, this capturing these moments have taken on a greater importance. And so can you talk about the importance of capturing the historical moments, and why is that important, especially when people can distort the truth or put things out that are not truthful? Because I think that's what you're going to, right? They're distorting it. They're assassinating character in a way to excuse the fact that they were killed in some cases. So can you talk about the importance of capturing these historic moments?
So I'm not even 100% sure if it would be necessarily distorting the truth, but just deciding what truths to magnify is what both sides really do. We're making sure that you're actually caring about the person as a human. And so with the documenting I do, it really does show that, because we don't get to see what the civil process looks like. Sometimes we'll see what the public, the state prosecution, we don't see what the federal prosecution looks like, but we don't see what that civil process looks like. And behind those closed doors, we need as much evidence as possible. Like, hey, this is the person that they took from their family. This is a real human that had people that really cared about them. And here's those people caring about them. But then also, that helps there, but it also helps as far as when we're putting it out in the media that, like, okay, it just really comes back to bringing more of the human aspect of that person, because it's so easy for people to just look at their phones, look at their TVs and think this is just a character on TV versus an actual human.
It's interesting in your responses, because you're very sort of like almost like matter of fact, right? Like I'm imagining, like if I was there, I would be capturing in, I think, my conversation, the emotion of the moment. Do you think you've been able to process the emotion of what you have witnessed over the last couple of years and document it?
I'd say I've done a good amount of processing of it. At Amir Locke's funeral was the first funeral where I didn't cry. So that's when I decided to take a break. So during Jordan's funeral, we had 3 of them. And so by that time, it was like, I've gotten really close to the family. So then seeing his younger brother, Philonis, break down, that's what made me break down. And then there was another funeral in LA for the girl who was shot while she was trying on dresses, because the police were just going after somebody and they were not necessarily thinking about everyone else around. The paparazzi, actually they're media, but it's LA, so I call them paparazzi because they acted like paparazzi. They swarmed the casket and the parents as they were crying to get their shot. So that made me super emotional. So there's been like always something that kind of like puts me over a little bit, but when nothing really happened during Amir Locke's funeral, that was when I was like, okay, let me take a time out real quick and just really think about everything. So I'm good. I've been, had time to process. I've had time to think, because when I think about it more about like neutrally, like what's next, not necessarily emotionally like positive or negative, that's helped me make sure that I can keep on doing this kind of work.
You started out in like on your website, I think you're like, no matter the question, creativity is the answer. I think that's what it says on your website. You started out as, here are the list of things I do, but at the end of the day, sort of the summary is I'm a creative, right? Often when we think about how we make a difference or what's happening, I sit in a lot of spaces where people have a lot of opinion about what someone else should do. And often the conversation is, what can you do in the realm of your talent, of your leadership, of your realm of influence? Because if we all leaned into that more boldly in addressing these issues, we would probably get a lot further more quickly. For those of us and those that are listening that are in the creative space, what advice might you give if they're interested in getting more engaged in issues in community? It doesn't even have to be on this particular issue around policing and community and documenting things like you have, but what advice might you give?
I would say just start doing something that you can have control over yourself, where you're not going to let any kind of outside sources or forces really stop you from getting any kind of start. Because if you have an idea like at the end of like the Grand Master Plan is to do a portrait series of 10 civil rights leaders across the country, but you have $0, zero connections, zero anything, you're going to let that stop you from actually making any kind of progress. So I would say start with something that you can control, like you're in the software world, it's called MVP, or minimum viable product. I think that's what's called. Yeah. So start with that and like just make something. It might even be a self-portrait series or a street photography series where you're getting more into your writing, where the captions matter and you're putting on social media, or you're writing articles on Medium. But you can start somewhere to then that where you have 100% control to be able to then, build the momentum up to where you can now either start asking or have more credibility to get the connections, or have money to fly places to go and take these portraits and actually achieve the final vision. But I think right now we live in a world where the final product of whatever we're trying to do seems so attainable that we forget some of the foundation building parts, and that can be in anything. I mean, like selling these hats, like if people don't care about me, they're not buying these hats. Or if they don't care, or I don't build a brand around people caring about, the hat, people aren't going to buy the hat. Like people, if they don't care, they're not going to buy. So if you don't have that foundation, you're not going to be able to really create that grand master plan at some point.
And then maybe the next question is around the small businesses or not-for-profits. And you were saying that you've helped nonprofits. You do help nonprofits and small businesses tell their story better. And there's just an element and a through line of what are you noticing around those needs, or what do you think is missing from the storytelling in the social sector?
The biggest problem that I see is there's no clear goal for the video. So let's say you have a nonprofit has an annual fundraising event coming up, and the goal there is to raise funds during that fund and need section. So it should then be you would make a video that actually goes right towards that goal and right towards those people who are going to be sitting in that audience right then and there. But that can be the start, and then what happens during all the planning phase is to like, well, we normally don't have a video, so let's try to do this, let's try to do that, let's try to do this. Like, hey, we want people to work here too, so let's make sure we include some recruitment stuff. And then now at the end, when you have no real clear goal and no real audience for that, you just make something that looks good, sounds good, and doesn't actually perform, which happens all the time, because when you hire a videographer, they just want it to look good and sound good. That's where they are, rating themselves at. But organization has different goals, so the goal needs to be clear and be, reverse engineered throughout the whole production process to make sure it actually works towards that. So that's been the biggest thing, is just not having a clear, definite goal and trying to mix too much in there.
I've been to a lot of fundraisers. I've seen a lot of videos and speakers. They always bring up the need, right? Like they bring up someone from community, or they tell these very, very sad stories, right? Like those stories do exist, but do you think we're amplifying enough the aspirations of community and the brilliance that exists in it? And is that just not investable?
In my opinion, I think the amount of money most of these organizations spend on their annual fundraiser can be better spent creating content throughout the whole year and building a more sustainable outreach strategy, as far as making sure people understand who they are from an organization and making people care more. So now you have, instead of this one night to make people care, for the who are usually there because their company bought a table, so they don't really even know who you are or care. But now they're being asked to give money, and if your program didn't do a good job of actually making them care, you're not going to really get much. So then the amount that you raise is really what you already went in there with, plus whatever, a couple thousand, couple hundred, depending on the organization, for you got from the crowd, because again, they don't actually care. And let's say you max that whole, event at 300 people, and you're a Target, you're a Best Buy, and you threw $10,000 sponsorship, whatever. I would rather I would see more value throwing that $10,000 and getting that logo recognition with this good organization in content that's put out on a more consistent basis. Because now you're going to be able to reach thousands of people. And especially if the outreach is done right, the delivery is done right, as far as running ads to make sure it gets seen by those who need to see it. Mm-hmm. So I think just even from a whole annual, I think they're the ones that raise those millions, those high six figures, those low six figures amount every single year. And I think they're going to raise that regardless of what they do. But I think some small organizations need to rethink where they're putting those funds and how they can get more out of it, going forward.
Very interesting. And so I appreciate that. But, and part of my question too was about the depiction of community in those videos. Do you think that is evolving?
I think it can. This is a tough one, but I think I'm going to say it anyway. Yeah, I don't think it's going to evolve because people are using that as the reason why they need funds. And I think if you're an organization that's been doing that for 20 years and you're using the same kind of things, why do you really even exist anymore? If you haven't made any progress towards your mission. Your mission should be something that you try to accomplish instead of something that you just treat. So I think that's something that happens a lot in the nonprofit world, is where people will show that they're treating the problem, but in a way to then raise the funds to continue to treat the problem, because it hits that emotional note that will get them to take action. So when we think about people trying to use visuals to get people to take action, there's axis like going up and down. That's like arousal, so high arousal, low arousal, and then pleasure, displeasure. And the top two axes is where you get the most action happening. So whether it's high arousal, high displeasure, that's when people are going to start doing things against you. But there's also high pleasure, high arousal. So some people want to feel good because they are helping fix that bad thing. So showing the community at its worst is going to hit that point that's going to get those people to raise funds. So those are the people who donate from those kind of videos. And I think it's probably going to be the trend for years, as far as people, instead of people showing more of the hope of what can be done. So I think if you're doing, again, content on a consistent basis versus just one time and trying to get as many people in that room emotional, I think you're going to have more opportunities to show like the real progress that's being made versus just showing all the bad.
And how has your perception of how art influences what's happening in community changed over the past couple of years?
I think so. I think just like wine, maybe 5-10 years ago, kind of got it's become more mainstream, being able to enjoy wine. And same thing I feel like is happening with art, where people are not letting it be something that's just for those people. I think more people are enjoying art in all aspects in a deeper way. And I think it allows people to then have opportunities to open their mind to just different aspects. And so one thing I'm doing with Lululemon next month is I have a gallery that I'm doing in partnership with them at the Mall of America, where it's about solitude and finding peace. So it's going to be, some of my journey even of finding peace. And we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier today. But it's also going to be, me going and interviewing and doing, street photography and getting more people trying to talk about solitude. But like even just that aspect of a corporation who people care about because of for whatever reasons, and might even just because they feel like that's what they're supposed to be wearing because that's what everyone's wearing. Now, because they already care about them that way, now there's an opportunity for me to come in with my art to then help people be more at peace. So seeing more stuff like that, I think is good. It gives a gateway to more engagement.
Yeah, I see that Valerie is now an ambassador for them as well. She does a lot of fitness stuff. So the fact that you both are familiar does change my opinion or my connection even to that particular corporation. You're sort of touching on how you're continuing to do your work. Do you plan on continuing to document issues to advance social justice? Like, will you stay with either Crump, or do you plan on continuing to kind of go into those moments and document them when they show up?
So yeah, I'll definitely continue to work with Ben whenever he needs me, and I really kind of just call him at any time, like, what do you got going on? And then be like, oh yeah, come to this, or I'll have you come to this, or I'll fly out for this, or if there's nothing going on as far as like where he feels like we need more, then I'll be here and working on other projects. And I've had some ideas for projects and bigger productions that I haven't quite been able to get off the ground yet, just because I need people to be ready to think about just everything in a different way. I had a short that I was trying to produce with, a series I was trying to produce with Brandon Williams, who is the nephew of George Floyd. And it was going to be called I Hate It Here. And it was just going to give leaders across the region an opportunity to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and why, and also look at what the future holds. So community leaders, people in sports, people in corporations, people in nonprofits. So just different episodes. So if you think like The Shop meets David Letterman's My Next Guest is, but like more like The Shop, but for trying to have more community conversations. So I was talking with a couple different organizations about getting it going, and nothing happened after everyone was super excited about doing it. So I kind of just put a pause on those things because I still need to make sure that my other businesses are running well, but because it takes a lot to put all the planning and everything into it, and then for it to not to go anywhere is kind of rough. But I do want to I'm working on getting to a point where I can start producing more projects like that, producing more galleries like what I'm doing with Lululemon, and just finding different opportunities to do things in a bigger way. So when it comes to civil, like just more civil rights, civil injustices, I want to be able to work on how do I take these ideas that I have and then find who's going to pay for them, because it's going to be different now than a company or organization like, all right, we're going to hire you to do this. Now it's like, I have this idea and I need you to pay for it. So I'm trying to figure out what that looks like now. Because I mean, even as any creative goes, like you first start creating for yourself, and then you're like, I want to make this a living. So you have to find a patron, and that's either individuals or corporations. So I went the corporation route, or nonprofit route, just the corporate route, so to speak. And they have the money that I need. They have ideas, and they have an audience that they're trying to reach. And I have my talent and my equipment and know-how, and we trade those things. So now partially what I'm doing is working on building more of an audience, so that now I have an audience, and I still have my talent, I still have my know-how, and I have my ideas. And now at this point, all I need is money, because someone wants to be a part of what it is I'm doing. So slowly but surely, that built the Lululemon gallery is a big step in the hope for that process being something that could work, because it's a giant company based out of Canada. So if I can get them to do that, I think I can expand my horizons to even do more than just even what's here locally and go to other. I think my biggest successes in this realm of me going on this next level of my creativeness is going to be happening out of state.
Talk to me about, 2-3 influential people that you have in your life and how they've impacted you.
So one is Alex Tittle. He's never, been someone that has tried to keep any secrets from anyone. He's always helping people try to get to the next level, whatever that level may be, for them. And whether or not they even reciprocate it, he's always, helping. That's one thing I admire about him, is the fact that he's just the ultimate connector, and just like, what's that word? Promoter? What was like an
amplifier? He amplifies your work.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one person. Ben Crump is another person. He's being able to see how he works and how he's able to make impact on a nationwide level has been really important to see as far as being able to just envision what it's expanded my worldview of what's possible in this life we live in.
And Alex,
go ahead. Sorry.
Alex Tittle, because you've mentioned Alex a couple of times, and I know I met Alex and I know him, but I know the audience may not know him. So he was very much involved in the city. He's done work with the Super Bowl. He's a leader here. He's been out east. But who's Alex? This is for people that want to know. Like, who is this Alex he keeps bringing up?
Yeah. So Alex, and he's right now, I believe he runs diversity, equity, and inclusion for Medica and across the whole everything. So which is great. And that's been his realm as far as that goes. And there's a lot of people who go into diversity, equity, and inclusion just for the speaking fees and for the titles and the paychecks. But he is someone that will actually put his job on the line for making sure that whoever has hired him is actually following up on those promises that they have made publicly, privately, wherever, making sure they're actually making diversity, equity, and inclusion in their actual day-to-day way of life.
And he's worked a lot in supplier diversity. And so then Ben, so you get to see how he shows up for people. So that's been impactful. So you got Alex and Ben and people that have created a lot of influence for you. Would you also have Alex as the person who has been your most important professional mentor, or do you have someone else in that category, perhaps?
Alex for a while was my formal mentor when it came professionally, especially back when the days when the Super Bowl, leading up to when the Super Bowl was coming to town, and then directly after. We don't necessarily speak too much anymore as far as on the professional standpoint. And one thing I haven't really had a formal mentor in the past 3 years, but what I've done is I've taken more mini mentorships and actually being intentional about setting time with people and asking questions and getting answers and seeking feedback.
Mm-hmm. Do you see yourself as a mentor? Do you mentor people?
If I mentor anybody, it's not a formal setting and they might just be watching me and trying to learn from me that way. So I don't have any formal mentors right now. I think because I'm still working on, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for everything I have and where I'm at, and how with business I'm able to actually make it on my own and not have to have a job and side hustle my creativity. But I know that I have way further to go. So sometimes I don't see myself as someone that should be mentoring anyone just because I haven't made it to where I think I need to make it. But I guess as far as helping people get to where I am now, because that's, again, would be great for a lot of people to be that can be the end for them. But for me, I have so much further I need to go that I haven't really thought about myself as someone that could be a mentor.
I think that's kind of an interesting perspective. And, when I think about even, the couple of years where I sort of knew you were documenting what was happening around Ben Crump and the Floyd family and all of that, right? Like I could see the pictures, I could see some of the footage you were putting out, that's a really, really important work. And I guess I'm going to go back there because you just prompted this for me. Where is that material? What are you going to do with it?
Right now, I'm working on potentially doing a gallery with Philonis, who's George's brother. They're planning a celebration right now for George's birthday on October 15th. So I might be doing a gallery for that. But as far as the aspirations of where everything's going to go, I don't know yet.
But the aspiration is that you would like for that material and those photos to be public. Like you don't want to keep it yourself, and the family doesn't own the material. You own the material, and you would like to be able to do something with it. Is that it?
Yeah, that was the thought. Yeah.
And then one last question: what is one of the most important lessons you've learned in your time on this earth?
I'd say the most important lesson I've learned is that it's really important how you talk to yourself and what you tell yourself is possible. Because if you, I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, it's important how you talk to yourself and how you believe in yourself.
Good. How's the kids?
Kids are good. Got the 7-month-old is crawling forward now, which is always nice. Versus and getting mad when she gets stuck.
Was she crawling backwards before? Or
crawling backwards, yeah. Just go backwards, end up under her walker, end up under tables, and just get mad when she's under there and doesn't know how to get out. But she's moving forward now, which is great because she gets to terrorize her brother, which she loves and he hates. But we're doing great.
If you enjoy this show and want to learn more about what we do here at the Minneapolis Foundation, please visit us online at minneapolisfoundation.org. And of course, if you want to follow Chanda or the Minneapolis Foundation on Twitter or Instagram, that's Chanda S. Baker or MPLS Foundation. This is Sue Pak-Kienitz. Thanks for listening.